Thank you for everybody joining us for this creative brief. I'm George Harutun, Applied Arts, and I am joined by my colleague, Bonnie, who will ensure that any of your typed questions will be answered by the speakers at the end of the presentation. Bonnie.
Hi there.
Jackie Lane, also from John Street. Jackie.
Hello.
And Stephen from Miami Art School, Toronto. Stephen.
Hello.
Thank you all of you for participating for this and providing these great prizes. You have just joined, and if you have missed anything except introduction of our speakers. So now I'm going to pass the mic over to Jackie. She will take it over. Jackie.
Great. So Jackie, you need to activate your screen.
Great. Hi, everybody. Thank you for the introduction, and I'm equally excited to be here representing John Street. So kind of overview that we'll go through today for the WWF brief will be, I'll kick it off. I'll go through WWF brief overview. We'll then dive into the design brief, which I will go through with you guys in detail. I'll then pass the mic over to Stephen, who will go through the advertising brief. And then we'll pass the mic back to Bonnie to go over the contest entry details. And then we will save some time at the end to have your questions answered. So we'll just jump right into it. Here we are with the WWF brief and the internship challenge. Great. So WWF is an amazing global organization, and we are super lucky that they have given us permission to use them as the precedent for this brief. They stand for a lot of things, but what we've kind of articulated here is they really do stand for advocacy, empowerment, and community. And this was all kind of derived from a creative brief we had put together and actually worked on here at John Street. So we're really excited to see what you guys come up with at the end. But the brand character of WWF is bold, inclusive, and passionate. And we've created this manifesto that we really think brings to life WWF and what they're all about. So bear with me as I go through it. So as humans, we often see ourselves as something other than nature. Yet, the major issues affecting nature today, climate change, loss of biodiversity, pollution, and the degeneration of natural resources are all directly tied to our ability to survive and thrive on this planet today and into the future. The reality is that we aren't any different after all. Humans, animals, plants, oceans, we're all in this together. At the end of the day, we are all wildlife, and our future depends on how well we take care of one another. At WWF Canada, we believe that there's incredible strength in the links that bind humans and other living things together. Our goal is to strengthen those further links, and everything we do is about demonstrating that what's possible when humans live in harmony with nature. So that kind of really summates the kind of belief and the purpose behind WWF, and has this kind of brand stance of we are all wildlife, which, excuse me, is their tagline. So moving along onto the next page, what we're trying to achieve with consumers. Current perceptions of WWF are largely tied to species and habitat conversation, but while conservation is core to what WWF does, most people don't understand the bigger picture, the purpose behind WWF's work. So this kind of message and communication isn't necessarily getting out to the customer and our consumer, and we want to make sure that what WWF is doing is quite clear. We need to demonstrate it's an organization that aims to unleash the possibilities that emerge when all humans and nature live in harmony. So who do we want to engage and why? So we want to engage the environmentally aware, solution-oriented Canadian. Hopefully this is you. Hopefully you're already well aware and supporting WWF. The millennial generation, so that 18 to 34 sweet spot. The ones who don't want to be told anything. So that's, I think, a really key component to this. They want to join and participate in an inclusive way versus, someone wagging their finger and feeling pressure to do it. They want to make that conscious decision themselves and be kind of the leader and master of their own destiny. The majority of young Canadians who feel connected to the natural world and concerned about the negative impact that humans are having on the planet are a key demographic or target. When so many organizations simply remind us of these problems or scare us about the consequences, WWF's opportunity is to reinforce a more thoughtful and optimistic vision of the potential that stems from the greater human nature connection. So again, we really want to make it a honest communication that allows people to participate and kind of allow people to rally on their own terms versus having, you know, a big scary person wagging their finger at you. And why might not they want to do what we want them to? So why might they not care, or why might they not participate, or why might they have zero engagement with it? And this is a hurdle that we'll have to get through with the visual identity and creative. But the biggest danger here is that overcomplicating WWF's message or making it too rational. We need we need to connect with them simple and emotionally in a compelling way to communicate the idea that we're all part of an ecosystem, and that WWF's work is about fostering solutions that help the ecosystem thrive. So again, it's about a clear, honest communication that speaks to everybody being part of wildlife, and we are all wildlife. And then on to the next page. So what's the key message? We need to communicate that nature needs you and you need nature. So there's that kind of harmony and combination. It's not just about having nature thrive or people thrive or animals or the environment. It's really all of these kind of levers that need to kind of work and be pulled in unison and in harmony. So why can we say this? Well, WWF's global mission is to stop the degeneration of the planet's natural environment and build a future in which humans live in harmony. Its focus is on finding practical, effective solutions, and it's one of the most recognized and trusted environmental brands in Canada. If you don't know what WWF is and who they are, I'm sure you've at least seen that little panda bear, and it sparked some sort of interest. So whether or not you know the kind of complexities and the depth of the organization, there is that really strong brand recognition, and it is a quite trusted not-for-profit in Canada and globally. So the tone and manner, it should be inspiring and provocative, but not alarmist or fear-mongering. It should still have, I think, an element that's strong and empowering, but there's still some sort of optimism. Again, we don't want people to feel humdrum and like the world's ending. We want to make people feel like they can contribute to an amazing future with WWF. So how to engage the target? So help people understand clearly the work we are doing and how they can fit it in and be a part of it. So how can we help, and how can we make it easy for them to help, and inspire them to get involved and be a part of the solution. So not only do we have to make people care, but we also have to make them feel like they want to participate and they're inspired to do so. And how will we know if we're successful? So after our work, Canadians will have a better understanding of what WWF is trying to achieve and feel more compelled to take action. And support, whether it's through donations and fundraisings. But we will be successful if the work engages with the target, it gets them to participate, it gets them to sign up, and the donations and fundraising component, is obviously plentiful. Okay, so that's kind of the preamble of WWF. It was a brief overview, if you will. Now we'll get into the kind of more functional component, which is the design brief, and this is really what you'll need to execute against those of you who are interested in participating in the design component. Excuse me. Great. So the ask is to create a new brand identity design for World Wildlife Foundation that clarifies, simplifies, and galvanizes Canadians around WWF's brand purpose of "We Are All Wildlife." So this is creating a new visual identity for WWF that includes, type and logo mark and, the colors and whatnot, all the kind of key tools or components to help bring a brand to life. Based on that kind of brief preamble, the new logo and the new visual language must be applied to 3 stationery pieces. So stationery, we kind of deemed as a business card, a letterhead, and an envelope. If you want to go beyond that, please feel welcome to. But we are, at bare minimum, only asking for those 3 components. But whatever kind of makes sense strategically or as part of your design, we're always more than welcome to see come to life. And then the other kind of component that is executional is a promotional piece. So whether it's a t-shirt, a tote bag, a hat, or another component of swag that makes sense with your visual identity. You know, maybe it's, I don't know, I can't think of a cell phone case or something, I'm not sure, but you know, this is just what we were thinking, but it can be expanded and creative, so long as I think it makes sense for the visual identity and the kind of strategic approach you're taking. So the executional mandatories are that the identity needs to feel timeless. It shouldn't feel like a flash in the pan. It shouldn't feel like something that's super trendy and here and now. As mentioned, that little kind of WWF panda bear has been around for a really long time and it still feels contemporary and modern. And it has, I think, through the last few years that it's been around. So how can we, you know, either build on that, start new? What does that kind of new millennial-minded target segment, what do they feel like they need and want for visual identity? But whatever it is, it should still feel timeless and have longevity to it. So you'll need the WWF logo mark. Then you'll also need the logo mark with a lockup of the tagline. And the tagline is, "We are all wildlife." The deliverables are that logo, the logo and lockup, 3 stationary pieces, and 1 promotional piece. So that's kind of all we need to see. It is my recommendation that you put it together in a very clear and organized manner so that as we are reviewing the contestants' work, it's kind of, you know, we're not having to do a lot of work to kind of figure out how the visual identity came to life, and it's very clearly and cohesively presented back to us with perhaps an articulation of the visual identity and the thinking behind it. Then if we move along to the next page, we just have a couple samples of deliverables. By no means is this how you have to lay it out, but it's just to kind of articulate what do we mean by the logo and what do we mean by the lockup, what is stationary and whatnot. So here we have an example that we did at John Street where we took the logo for home hardware. We added the tagline to it. So this was a unique scenario that we actually kept the icon, the little kind of graphic element, which is the HH house, but we created a new tagline, a new typography, and a new visual language around it. Then we have our stationery here. So it does have that business card, the letterhead, and the envelope, but as you can see, we added a few extra elements to kind of make it feel like it's coming to life more and make it feel more robust. And then these are some of the kind of swag or promotional elements we were speaking of. You know, we have a little tool bag, we have a water bottle, and we have a t-shirt. And as you can see, it all kind of wraps itself together and it really helps sell through the visual identity and the concept behind it. And then one that we pulled from Pentagram was the Heart and Stroke rebrand. So here you have the logo mark. It's not a tagline, but you know, this is how it could come to life. You have the logo mark, and then you have the logo mark lockup with the name of the organization. Then you have the stationery kit on the right, which is a little bit more forward and direct of what we are specifically asking for. And then on the next page, these are different promotional materials. So you have, you know, a t-shirt that can be a promotional material, but you can also have, you know, a bookmark or a notepad or a little brochure. Again, doesn't need to be overly complicated, but it really helps to kind of round out the visual identity and help us understand the thinking behind it. And that's it for the design brief and the kind of WWF brief overview. And that's it for design. And I'll be passing it along to Stephen, who will take you through the advertising brief.
Good afternoon. Hi, so we'll get right into it. Advertising brief, it's next slide. Sorry, I have to talk to Jackie. Next slide. Okay, so it's the same background that you saw for design as obviously the brand essence, the brand idea, what it stands for. So we're just going to get right into the brief. So the goal here is get young people talking about WWF with a captivating digital social media based campaign. And I'll just give you some overviews of what to consider as you go into this project. Remember, don't advertise. Remember, they hate it when brands cram messages down their throats. You have to play in their space and give them something they'll get behind. So we're talking about the millennials. And that's a general rule for all good advertising. You never want to cram stuff. You want them to be engaged. All right, what's happening? Sorry, there we go. And we're back. So remember, study up. The way to their hearts is to know who you're talking to. So research, scour the web, research some more to find out that perfect insight. We've given you a good brief, I think, but you can go deeper into the DNA of WWF and what they stand for. You must know your audience inside and out. Again, that's also, if you're playing in the social media space, digital space, you know, what works with them, you know, in the sense of what works for you on Instagram, what works for you, and what doesn't work for you, what gets to your heart. So simplicity is king. You may have technology on your side, but you must keep the message simple. If it's not simple, it'll get lost, muddled, or even worse, not shared. So as you know, or as I hope you know, that simplicity cuts through, because sometimes we want a big message or a big story, but if it doesn't come across quickly, it won't work. And it's not just another environmental organization. WWF is big in a good way. They're all over the world and have the power to influence people. Be bold and not afraid. You have to obviously stay on brand. These guys are not Greenpeace. You're not going to scare me into wanting to join the organization or get behind them. But still, they have this, they're probably more approachable than a lot of other organizations that play in this space. And remember, that technology and platforms aren't the idea, they're the medium. So come first with the idea and then use the technology to advance it. Next slide, please. Okay, what's essential? The campaign or activation concept needs to span across relevant channels, i.e. Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. You can also think of stunts or experiential. As you know, sometimes when you do a stunt, a lot of times when the stunt is built, for example, for anti-plastic campaign that was done in France, they put a whale on a beach made out of plastic, and that was a stunt. But it was actual size of a sperm whale, and people would go up to it, and from a distance it looked just like this big whale. But as you went up to it, you saw that it was all made out of plastic bottles and plastic containers. And then people Instagrammed it, they Facebooked it, and it spread like wildfire. It can be platform specific, but make sure the audience is there and engaged. So again, when you're using one of these platforms, you can pick one in particular if you want to just use Instagram or the stunt, but just make sure that the audience is engaged. And to create a new campaign for World Wildlife Fund, to create a new campaign for World Wildlife Foundation that would clarify, simplify, and galvanize the Canadians around WWF's brand purpose of We're All Wildlife. So pretty straightforward. Executional mandatories, I don't want to limit you, except for it needs to have the WWF logo on it and the tagline, We're All Wildlife. Okay, so deliverables, name your idea and follow it up with one sentence that explains it. So that's kind of just like when you come up with your idea, what's it called? So if you think of, what's a good example of, so Cheetos Museum, I'm not sure if you guys are aware of it, but Cheetos Museum was a campaign done in the States where people had to, well, you know, Cheetos are crazy looking things. They can look like a saxophone, they can look like a person dancing. So what they ended up doing was they created this contest where people could submit their Cheeto and submit it into the museum contest, but they could call it Cheetos Museum. And then everybody understood that this is a place that will hold all these Cheetos that look like things. And then to elaborate on that, explain what your idea does and how it comes to life. Like a nice paragraph, as you can see in the next point, explain the angle you took for your project, max 50 words, just how did you get there? And then in the work section, a minimum of 3 executions. Is there another? Yeah, so, and then when you think of those 3 executions, just backing up, they could be 3 executions, you know, through Instagram. You could do 3 executions through a stunt. I mean, minimum 3. I think 3 is probably, you probably would need more, but if you did that stunt that I was referencing about the whale, you would probably have one picture of the whale on the beach, then you would probably have other executions of how people pushed it out through Instagram or how they pushed it through Snapchat. And that's it. I think Bonnie's now going to take it over and tell you about the how to enter and things like that, and then we'll take questions at the end. Okay, thanks.
Great. Thank you, Stephen and Jackie. Can everybody hear me? I had you on mute for a while, so yeah, you can hear me? Good. Contest entry details. Okay, Jackie, next slide. So everybody, the entry deadline is this Friday, November 16. Yes, this Friday, November 16 at 4:00 p.m. That's Toronto time, so Eastern Standard Time. Don't know what time zone you're in, but 4:00 Eastern Standard Time. So that gives you time, but we something that is not ridiculously unrealistic of sometimes what is asked of an agency or design firm like John Street to come up with, you know, not a complete campaign, but ideas to pitch back to a client. It's actually not unrealistic. The entry cutoff. We have decided that we will accept 50 advertising entries and 50 design entries only. There's going to be a counter on the Creative Futures website that will tell you how many entry slots are left so that you don't keep spinning your wheels if all the slots are filled. So probably we're not going to get any entries today. That would be ridiculous, I think. But starting tomorrow, you should check the clock on our site to see how many spots are left. The final deadline is 4:00 Friday, but we may have filled all the slots before then. So the jury are the people that you have already heard from today. That's Jacqueline Lane, who's the design director of John Street, Stephen Jurisic, who's the dean of Miami Ad School Toronto, and George Hadotun, who's the founder and art director of Applied Arts Magazine. So they're the three people who are going to look at all of the entries and make the selection. So Jackie, next slide. All right, what are the prizes? So there are, for design, 2 prizes in total. One entrant will receive $1,000 from Applied Arts, a cash prize, and one entrant, maybe the same person or may not be, will win a paid 2-month internship at John Street, which is located in Toronto. So the shortlisted entrants for the internship, those whom it's deemed will be accepted to be interviewed for the internship, will be announced with the winners. The prizes for advertising, there are 4 prizes in total. One entrant will win a $1,000 cash prize from Applied Arts. And then there are 3 entrants who will be nominated for a scholarship to Miami Ad School in Toronto. The top one is $5,000. There's also $2,500 and $1,000. So in the same respect of the internship, the shortlisted entrants for those scholarships will be announced with the winners. So that may sound a little complicated at the beginning, but let's just put it in perspective. If you're not in Toronto time zone or anywhere near Toronto, for example, if you're in St. John's, Newfoundland, you may not wish to apply for the internship in Toronto because you may not be able to get yourself to Toronto to apply for it. So we've structured it so that you can apply just for the cash prize or cash prize plus internship. And the same with respect to the advertising prize. You can apply just for the cash prize or cash prize and the scholarship. So you can see how we wouldn't necessarily have the same winners in each category if you haven't applied for both parts of the prize. So next slide. Okay, so who's eligible? So for the $1,000 cash prize, the only eligibility is you must be currently enrolled in a post-secondary visual arts program in Canada. Okay, the entry form will ask you what school you're going to and the year you're in. So that's the only eligibility for the cash prize. However, for the John Street internship, if you wish to apply for that, you must be in your final year of a graphic design program in Canada. You must be legally able to work in Canada because it's a paid internship. And you must be responsible for your own accommodation and travel to Toronto if that's applicable. So in other words, if you're in St. John's, Newfoundland and you want to apply to it, that's okay, but you have to get yourself to Toronto if you are awarded the internship. For the Miami Ed School Toronto scholarships, you must use the scholarship towards tuition in an applicable program by end of 2019. And we will list on the entry form the applicable programs. And then, of course, you must meet the admission requirements. So just because you have a scholarship doesn't mean you're automatically accepted. You have to apply. If you're accepted, you may apply the scholarship towards your tuition. All right, next slide. So how to enter? It's not terribly complicated. You go to creativefutures.ca. If you go there right at this moment, the entry form is not up yet. It will be up as soon as we complete this audio recording and put it live on our site. You'll be able to go there and download the Creative Challenge entry form. So it's right on the home page of creativefutures.ca after this recording. You download the Creative Challenge entry form, and there's like one entry form that explains everything that it has had on the previous 2 slides. And then you choose the one-page entry form that you will use, either the design prize only, or the design prize plus internship, or the advertising prize only, or the advertising prize plus scholarship. The only difference between those forms is the additional information that you're requested to provide for the internship and the scholarship. Okay? So I urge you to please read and follow the guidelines carefully. The reason is because there is very specific details about what is to be put as their first page and your second page, etc. We have asked, you'll see on the entry form, for you to submit one multi-page PDF as your entry only. So one multi-page PDF which contains your entry form and then what you're submitting as your creative. And in the case, for example, of the internship, you'll also have to provide a resume and some references, etc. So it's all clearly outlined on the entry form that you download. You've got till Friday, this Friday, November 16 at 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time to enter. But remember, only 50 design entries and 50 advertising entries will be accepted. So remember to look on the homepage of creativefutures.ca for the count of the number of entry spots that are still available. And how will you know if you won? Well, next Wednesday, so same time, same place, exactly 1 week from now, we will announce the winners. So same people will be on the line that are on my line today. They will show the winners and give an explanation of why they were chosen as the winners, in addition to the shortlisted people for the internship and the scholarships. So if you haven't, if you've just come on the line too late, or you know somebody who's missed this live webinar, creativefutures.ca will also have the webinar up in about 2 hours after we've completed today. The recorded version of it will be up, so nobody's going to have missed anything. If you came in late on the line today, or you have friends who also want to sign up, then they can listen to it and download the entry form and proceed from there. So what's the next slide? Is there anything else, Jackie? Questions? All right, so thank you. So I'm just going to take the questions now, so just give me a second to look at what's on screen. So I do have one question, Jackie. This is probably for you first and foremost. So in terms of designing designing the logo and logo plus lockup, are you, I think there's a question about the panda bear. Mm-hmm. You showed an example, for example, of the Home Hardware new logo, and you were saying how it wasn't a completely new logo. You now have a new identity for Home Hardware that used some previous elements, but now has packaged it up in a new way with a new tagline. Is that what you're expecting for WWF, or you're looking for something, so not the panda anymore, or is that open to interpretation?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Bonnie, thank you so much for translating it. It's really open for everyone to kind of explore independently, you know, whatever your idea is or whatever your concept is, whatever kind of components you're jumping off of, does it make sense? Does it make sense to keep it? Does it make sense to move past it? And as long as there's a clear and concise kind of strategic approach and rationale as to why, don't just get rid of it because you think you should get rid of it. Like, as long as there's a reason and there's a why, we're all game for it. Again, you don't have to keep it. You don't have to get rid of it. It's up to you. But I think everything should be done with purpose and intention. And there should be a rationale and reason behind why you're keeping it or why you're getting rid of it.
Okay, great. Hopefully that person, if you have a further question on that, just go ahead and type it in. But here's another question, and I'll let, it's for Jackie. I'm kind of jumping down in the list so that Jackie can answer this one as well. So Jackie, you mentioned promotional items and the stationery. Now you said it doesn't, the minimum is 3, but they can show more things. Is it your recommendation that there is more, or that's just completely open to people, or do you feel, you know, you get bonus marks for giving more?
Definitely would say it's my opinion, and it's always going to be quality over quantity. If you can get your idea across in a letterhead and with the bare minimum, and you don't need to do more and it's not necessary, then there's no need to. But if you feel like there's components and pieces that are a must and really bring excitement and personality to the visual identity that you feel maybe confined with just our few executions, then we absolutely welcome doing more. But it's absolutely quality over quantity, and more is not always better, and more isn't always more. As long as there's purpose and intention and there's reason and a rationale for it, we will accept it. But that's not to say because you put 27 pieces in a PDF that it would win over someone who just did the bare minimum. It's all about the idea, your concept, the why, and how it is brought to life, and if that's clear and easily to understand and it's articulated well.
Okay, so Stephen, here's a question for you. The executions, you were giving the great example of I'm interpreting here. So the Cheetos Museum and the plastic whale. Those were the stunt part. Now, when you said the executions, though, the executions are meant to be 3 social ads / messaging. That's the minimum, right? Showing three.
Well, it's 3 examples to show the idea. So you could think of it like a campaign. Like if the Cheetos Museum, they did a lot of it as an Instagram campaign where they would show like a picture of a flamingo that looked like a Cheeto. Then they would show a giraffe that looked like a Cheeto. And then they would have like a saxophone. And then there would be a link to the website to look at them all like a museum. But they used Instagram as a way to kind of feature them. So they would have shown some examples, say through social media. And then they might have had like a case board or a website to show where the hub was.
Right. Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes. Okay. It's Bonnie here. So it's my own aspect of the same question that was for Jackie. And also, are you expecting a logo redesign in your case, Stephen, for advertising?
I mean, yeah, again, it's probably going to be different people working on the design versus the advertising. I would say just keep the panda, just because that's it's what is recognizable at this moment. So yes, stay with the panda.
So for advertising, it's about the ad campaign, the idea, and not a new visual identity. That is the design brief. That's the execution for design. For advertising, it's all about a campaign, the idea behind the campaign, and how you're going to execute that idea.
Correct.
Okay, great. I have one question about entries. The accepting only 50. How will I know if I've been accepted? That's a good question. Okay, so when you submit first of all, look at the counts and know if there's spaces left. It should be fine if you submit then. If you send your entry in and it is not set up according to the guidelines in our entry form guidelines, then it will be disqualified. However, we won't just not accept it. We will notify you as soon as possible that there's a problem, that we can't accept it, and the reason that we can't accept it, like you didn't name your file properly, or it's not in the format that we've specified, and then give you an opportunity to put it back in. However, in the meantime, that delay does not solidify your space as an entrant. So just if it gets disqualified, we'll notify you. But if in the meantime the entry slots are full, that's unfortunate, but not a lot we can do about that. But you know, the sooner you get it in, the sooner you'll know for sure. There's also an email in the entry form for questions. So if somebody didn't get a question answered today, then please feel free to ask that question. We'll try to get them answered as quickly as we can. I don't think we have anything else I see on the screen, I think has been covered by the answers that were given today. So I think we're all good. Last chance, anybody who wants to type a question on the screen. I don't see anything. So, okay, guys, what's going to happen then is when we say, okay, we're done, the phone will be dead. Everybody will shut down, and in a couple hours, this will be a recorded version up on the creativefutures.ca website. So thank you, Stephen.
Thank you. That was fun.
Thank you, Jackie.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
And I'm not going to say thank you to George because he did go back to his office a little while ago. Okay. So thank you, everybody.
Great.
And
thank you.
I'll talk to you, Jackie and Stephen, later. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.